In the year 3078, space was no longer a mystery to most civilizations. Many alien races had built empires across the stars, sharing trade, knowledge, and even wars. But among them, the Vorthians were known as the most advanced. Their ships could bend light. Their minds could connect across galaxies, and their pride was bigger than their technology. They believed no other species could match their level of intelligence or design. So when their long-range scanners picked up a small, old-looking ship entering their territory, they thought it was a joke. The ship was slow compared to theirs, its energy readings weak and unstable. Its design looked ancient. Boxy metal plates, bulky thrusters, and communication antennas sticking out like primitive tools. Vorthian pilots zoomed around it in their sleek silver vessels, laughing through their communication channels. "Look at this piece of junk," one of them said. "Did a museum artifact fly into space?" Another added, "Maybe it's a lost probe from a dead planet." To them, the ship was a laughable relic. They decided to approach it, partly out of curiosity and partly for amusement. The commander of the Vorthian patrol, Zareth Kul, gave the order to open a communication link. Static filled their speakers for a few seconds before a human voice broke through. It was deep and calm. "This is Commander Elias Kor of the Terran Federation vessel Odyssey 4. Identify yourselves." The aliens froze for a moment. The voice sounded too composed, too confident for someone flying such an outdated ship. Zareth Kul smirked and replied, "You are trespassing in Vorthian space, human. State your purpose. Or are you lost?" There was silence for a moment. Then the human replied, "We are explorers. We mean no harm. We seek only peaceful contact." The aliens burst out laughing again. "Explorers? In that ancient tin can?" one pilot mocked. "Your ship looks like it should have turned to dust ages ago." Another joked, "Maybe they built it from scrap metal they found on their planet." But as the laughter echoed across the Vorthian channel, one of the science officers aboard Zareth Kul's command ship frowned. She was studying the readings from the human vessel, and something didn't add up. "Commander," she said quietly, "this ship's materials, they're old. Very old. But the systems are still working. That shouldn't be possible." Zareth Kul dismissed her concern. "Maybe the humans just like old designs," he said. But deep inside, even he felt a slight curiosity. Why would anyone fly such an ancient craft into one of the most dangerous regions of space? The Odyssey 4 moved slowly, its engines glowing with a soft blue light. Compared to the Vorthian ships, it looked small and fragile. Its hull bore scars from radiation, micrometeors, and time itself. Yet it moved with steady precision, as if its pilot knew exactly what he was doing. Inside the ship, Commander Elias Kor sat in the control chair, his hands on the manual flight controls. He was calm, though the situation was tense. His crew of 4 watched the alien ship circling them like hawks. The lights in the cabin flickered slightly, a reminder of how long their systems had been running. The youngest crew member, a woman named Dr. Mira Voss, whispered, "They're laughing at us, Commander." Kor didn't respond at first. He looked out through the main viewport at the swarm of bright, sleek alien vessels surrounding them. "Let them laugh," he said finally. "They don't understand what this ship is, or what it's been through." The Vorthians began transmitting scans and images of the human ship back to their main fleet. Engineers, scientists, and even historians gathered to look at the strange find. Some thought it was a prank. Others believed it was a lost relic drifting in space for centuries, somehow still active. No one could explain why it had suddenly appeared or how it was still functioning. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Vorthian command cruiser, Zareth Kul decided to play along. "Human vessel Odyssey 4, he said over the communicator. "You are requested to submit to inspection. Do not attempt to flee. We promise not to break your antique machinery." His tone was dripping with sarcasm. Elias Kor glanced at his crew. "We'll comply," he said quietly. "We have nothing to hide." He pressed the communication button and replied, "Understood, Commander Zareth Kul. We'll cooperate." The Vorthians guided the Odyssey 4 into one of their docking bays. As the human ship slowly entered, The alien engineers gathered, eager to see the strange craft up close. From the outside, it looked worn and outdated, with patches of different metals welded over its hull, and faded letters reading Terran Federation Odyssey 4. The name itself meant nothing to them. They had never heard of such a federation. When the airlock doors opened, the human crew stepped out wearing old-style spacesuits. Their helmets were round and bulky, nothing like the sleek biosuits the Vorthians used. The aliens stared in disbelief. One of them whispered, "These designs, they're thousands of years behind our time." Zareth Kul approached Commander Kor. "You say you are from the Terran Federation," he said. "There is no record of such a civilization in any of our archives. Where are you from exactly?" "Earth," Kor answered simply. The name meant nothing to the Vorthians. "Earth?" Zareth Kul repeated, raising a ridged eyebrow. "Never heard of it. Perhaps it was destroyed long ago." Kor frowned. "Destroyed?" he asked. "What do you mean?" Zareth Kul shrugged. "There was a system near the old Sol sector. Records say its star collapsed nearly 9 centuries ago. If that was your world, it no longer exists." For the first time, the human crew fell silent. Miravos's hands trembled slightly. "That can't be right," she whispered. "We only left orbit 12 hours ago." The aliens exchanged confused glances. 12 hours? That couldn't be true. They had already confirmed that the materials of the ship were far older than any known standard. Zareth Kul gave a small, mocking smile. "Either your people are very slow with time, or you've been lost for centuries." But the laughter was fading now. The longer the Vorthians examined the ship, the more puzzled they became. Its systems were simple, but durable. Every part was mechanical, designed for manual repair rather than automated systems. Yet despite its age, everything was still operational. The drive core emitted strange radiation signatures, unlike any energy field the Vorthians recognized. One of their scientists, a quiet researcher named Illura, ran another scan and frowned. "Commander, this engine uses a form of warp compression field, primitive but stable. It's impossible. Even our earliest prototypes were unstable after a few minutes of use." Zareth Kul turned toward her. "You're saying this human ship can do what we failed to do for decades?" Illura hesitated, then nodded. "It appears so. But it's not just that. There's something strange about the time readings around it. As if it's been traveling for 1,000 years, but inside only hours have passed." The alien commander looked back at the human standing proudly beside his ship. Kor didn't look confused or afraid. He looked patient, as if he already knew what they were discovering. The Vorthians didn't laugh anymore. The ship that had seemed like a joke now felt like a mystery that challenged everything they thought they knew. In their arrogance, they had mocked humanity's outdated design, but as the truth began to unfold, they realized the real question wasn't how the ship had survived so long, but when it had come from, and in that silent docking bay, surrounded by machines far more advanced than his own, Commander Elias Kor quietly smiled. He knew they were about to learn that sometimes the oldest things in the universe still held the greatest power. Yerdikio. Vorthians were still buzzing with excitement and confusion after bringing the human ship, Odyssey 4, into their station. At first it had been a source of amusement, a funny relic floating through space. But now it had become something far more serious. The alien engineers who examined it couldn't stop whispering about its strange systems, its old materials, and the way it seemed to have defied time itself. Still, many Vorthians believed it was some kind of trick or a staged performance by lesser species. They couldn't accept that this fragile, outdated ship had actually traveled through the deep void and reached them. The mockery continued over the station's communication network. "Look at their engines," one Vorthian laughed. "It runs on combustion plasma. That's like using fire to fly." Another replied, "And their navigation system? It uses math formulas we teach to hatchlings." They joked and laughed, their arrogance filling the air. But beneath the laughter, there was a growing curiosity that none of them wanted to admit. Commander Zareth Kul, leader of the patrol fleet, was sitting in his command room, reviewing the incoming data from the human vessel. He couldn't shake off the feeling that something didn't add up. His scientists had confirmed that the Odyssey 4 was built from materials that were over 1,000 years old, yet its engine still worked, and its life support systems were perfectly functional. That was impossible, even by Vorthian standards. He opened a communication channel to the human ship again. "Commander Elias Kor," he said, "your ship's construction does not match anything we've seen. Where exactly did you get this technology?" Kor's calm voice came through the speaker. "We built it ourselves, Commander. It's human-made, every part of it." Zareth Kul frowned. "Human-made? That is a bold claim for a species we have no record of. There is no mention of your so-called Terran Federation anywhere in our databases. Your people must have been extinct for centuries." Kor paused before replying. "We are very much alive, Commander. Maybe it is your records that are missing something." That quiet confidence in his voice unsettled the alien commander. "Our archives are flawless," Zareth Kul said sharply. "We've recorded every civilization that ever existed in this sector of the galaxy. But there is nothing about humans, nothing." Inside the Odyssey 4, Kor turned to his crew. Dr. Mira Voss sat beside him, scanning the readings on her monitor. "Commander," she said softly, "their records say humans are extinct. But that's impossible. We just launched our mission 12 hours ago." Kor nodded slowly. "I know, Mira. Something strange is happening here. We need to understand where, or when, we are." Back in the Vorthian control room, the scientists kept studying the human ship's data. They started digging through old stellar maps, searching for the Sol system that Kor mentioned. After hours of searching, they finally found it. But according to their data, the system's star had collapsed nearly 900 years ago. All planets orbiting it were destroyed or scattered. That meant the humans' home world, Earth, no longer existed. One of the younger scientists, Elura, felt a chill run through her. "Commander," she said, "if their ship really came from that system, then it must be over 1,000 years old." Zareth Kul shook his head. "That's not possible. The crew inside are alive. Their technology can't sustain life for that long. Unless—" He stopped mid-sentence. "Unless what, sir?" Elura asked. "Unless they didn't travel through space like we think they did," he replied slowly. "Unless they traveled through time." Elura stared at him. "Time travel? That's a myth, Commander. We've never proven it possible." Zareth Kul sighed. Neither had anyone proven a ship like this could exist. Yet here it is. Meanwhile, the Vorthians decided to access the Odyssey Barfi's communication logs. They wanted to listen to how these humans spoke, what kind of signals they used, and maybe learn something about their origin. But when they started decoding the messages, they were shocked. The signal was in a dead language, one that hadn't been spoken in centuries. It took several hours for the translation AI to fully interpret it. Finally, a clear voice filled the control room. "This is Commander Elias Kor of the Terran Federation Starship Odyssey 4, Mission Log Entry, Day 1. Warp trial successful. Preparing for first interstellar jump." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. "Warp trial?" one asked. "Their primitive ship had warp capability?" "That can't be," another replied. "They didn't even have fusion drives. How could they build a warp field?" Zareth Kul leaned closer to the recording. "Continue playback," he ordered. The next log entry made their eyes widen even more. "Something is wrong," the human voice said. "The field is unstable. Readings off the chart. Mira, shut it down now." There was a loud burst of static, then silence. When the audio ended, the control room was quiet. Nobody laughed this time. The realization began to sink in. The humans hadn't just been flying through space. They had been part of an experiment gone wrong, and somehow their ship had vanished from their own time and reappeared 1,000 years in the future. Zareth Kul felt his arrogance start to fade. He looked at the human through the viewing glass, standing tall beside his battered ship. This man had crossed time itself, without even meaning to. "He's not lying," Zareth Kul muttered. He really is from the past. The scientist Elura spoke softly. If that's true, Commander, then we're looking at a living piece of history. This ship, it's like a message from another age. Zareth Kul nodded slowly. A message we almost destroyed with our arrogance. He opened the communication line again. Commander Kor, he said, his tone now less mocking. Our records indicate your home world no longer exists. Your ship has traveled across more than just distance. It has crossed time itself. You've been gone for 1,000 years. Inside the human ship, silence filled the cabin. The crew exchanged frightened looks. Mira whispered, 1,000 years? That can't be right. Kor stared at the console in disbelief. The data didn't lie. Every astronomical reading, every star position was off by centuries. If that's true, he said quietly, then everything we knew, everyone we loved, they're gone. Mira's eyes filled with tears. Then we're the last humans. Kor placed a hand on her shoulder. Maybe. But if we've come this far, maybe it's for a reason. The Vorthians, once so proud and dismissive, now began to treat the humans with respect. They wanted to study the Odyssey 4, not to mock it, but to understand how it could have survived for so long. The engineers ran scans and simulations, but the results only deepened the mystery. The ship's energy core emitted a faint distortion field, something close to what their own scientists had theorized for temporal travel, but had never achieved. This technology shouldn't exist, Elura said, as she examined the readings. It's like they discovered time manipulation centuries before we even imagined it. Zareth Kul stared at her. Or maybe, he said softly, they didn't discover it. Maybe it was an accident. He looked again at the human commander. Kor stood beside the ship's hull, his hand resting gently on the metal surface as if he could feel the weight of all the years it had carried. The alien commander felt something unusual. Respect. Not fear, not superiority, but pure admiration. When the aliens who had mocked the Odyssey 4 gathered in the docking bay again, the laughter was gone. They walked slowly around the ship, studying every dent, every burn mark, every piece of history that had somehow survived the impossible journey. One of the younger pilots, the same one who had joked before, whispered to his friend, "Do you think maybe they were better than we thought?" His friend nodded. Maybe they were better than all of us. For the first time in centuries, the proud Vorthians realized that advanced technology did not always mean greater wisdom. These humans, with their outdated ship and old-fashioned spirit, had achieved what no other civilization ever had. They had beaten time itself. As the truth spread across the station, Vorthian scientists began sending reports to their homeworld. Human vessel discovered, the report read. Age, approximately 1,000 years. Status, functional. Crew, alive. Possible temporal displacement event. Across the galaxy, leaders and scholars began to talk about it. Who were these? Humans? How did they manage to do what even the most intelligent species could not? And most importantly, could they do it again? Inside the Odyssey 4, Commander Kor looked out the window at the vast field of stars. Somewhere out there, long ago, his world had lived and died. But here he was in a future that had forgotten his kind. They think we're relics, he said quietly. But maybe we're a reminder. Maybe they need to remember where it all began. Mira smiled faintly, wiping away her tears. If humanity really is gone, at least we showed them what we were capable of. Kor nodded. And maybe, in their eyes, we'll prove that even after 1,000 years, humanity still mattered. The alien commander, watching from the control tower, couldn't help but agree. For the first time, Zareth Kul felt a strange kind of humility. He had mocked this ship, laughed at its outdated form, but now he understood. The Odyssey 4 wasn't a symbol of weakness. It was proof that courage, hope, and determination could outlast even time itself. When the Vorthians began to carefully study the human ship, Odyssey 4, they realized that everything they thought they knew about science and time might be wrong. The ship was old, far older than anything that should have still been flying. The metal was worn and scarred, The systems were basic, and yet somehow it was still alive. Its engines hummed softly, its lights flickered with life, and its crew, though tired, were healthy and calm. Inside the massive Vorthian research station, hundreds of scientists gathered around large holographic screens, studying every inch of the human vessel. The air buzzed with curiosity and disbelief. The aliens had expected to find a broken, dying machine. Instead, they had found something that seemed to carry a mystery as deep as space itself. Illura, the lead scientist who had first suspected time distortion, was now in charge of the investigation. She moved slowly around the ship with a team of experts, scanning its surface with beams of blue light. "Look at this alloy," she said to her team. "It's primitive, but it's held up for over 1,000 years. No corrosion, no decay, no molecular breakdown. It's impossible." One of the younger engineers, Jareen, looked up from his scanner. "Maybe it wasn't just luck," he said. "Maybe the ship passed through something, a field or energy pocket that preserved it." Illura nodded thoughtfully. "That's what I'm thinking too. The readings around the engine suggest a temporal field, unstable, but still active. If that's true, then this ship didn't just survive time, it escaped it." The news spread quickly through the Vorthian ranks. Suddenly, the humans were no longer a joke. Every scientist wanted to study their technology. Every leader wanted to meet the people who had traveled through 1,000 years without aging a day. But Commander Elias Kor wasn't ready to let them tear his ship apart. Inside the Odyssey 4, he sat with his crew, listening to the hum of the alien station outside. Dr. Mira Voss was pacing nervously. "They're scanning everything," she said. "They'll want to open the core soon. We can't let them. That drive is unstable. If they touch it the wrong way, it could collapse." Kor nodded. "I know. That engine isn't just technology anymore, it's a time bomb. Literally." The other crew members, Lieutenant Harris and Engineer Dalen, exchanged worried looks. Harris said, "If the engine created that time distortion, it might still be active. Maybe that's why we ended up here." Dalen rubbed his hands together anxiously. "Commander, if they start pulling the drive apart, the field could reactivate. We might all be vaporized, or worse." Kor sighed. "Then we have to make them understand." Outside, Illura was trying to do just that. She had just shown her findings to Zareth Kul, the Vorthian commander. "This ship is like nothing we've ever seen," she said. "Its energy signature is decades beyond our technology, even though it's over a millennium old. Whatever accident they had, it broke the rules of physics." Zareth Kul frowned. "You're saying this old thing succeeded where all our scientists failed?" Illura nodded. "Yes, the humans created a stable warp field using raw energy, not quantum systems. It's primitive, but somehow it worked. It didn't just bend space, it bent time." The alien commander leaned back in his chair, his pride bruised. He had once laughed at this human vessel, but now he saw it for what it was. A miracle wrapped in metal and memory. "And the crew?" he asked. "They believe they only traveled for hours," Illura replied. "For them, this happened yesterday." Zareth Kul looked toward the observation window where he could see Commander Kor standing beside his ship. "They don't even know how important they are," he said softly. Later, Illura and her team entered the human ship, carefully stepping through its narrow corridors. The air inside was different from what they were used to, filled with the scent of old metal, oil, and human breath. It felt alive in a way their sterile stations never did. She placed a scanner against the wall and frowned as her device began to glow. "This structure is radiating a constant temporal echo," she whispered. "It's like it remembers every moment it has ever existed." In the control room, Elias Kor greeted them with a steady gaze. "You shouldn't be here without permission," he said firmly. "This ship has been through enough." Illura held up her hands peacefully. "Commander, we mean no harm. We just want to understand how this ship is still functioning. You have technology that shouldn't exist." Kor smiled slightly. "Technology? No, what we have is courage. The Odyssey 4 wasn't built by geniuses. It was built by dreamers. We didn't know if the warp drive would work. We only knew that someone had to try." His words surprised Illura. She wasn't used to such emotion. "But you did more than try," she said. "You broke the boundary of time." Kor looked down. "We didn't mean to. Our drive malfunctioned. There was a flash, a distortion, and when we came out, the stars were wrong. Everything was different." Mira, standing beside him, added softly, "We thought it was a few minutes. Turns out it was 1,000 years." Elura's eyes softened. "Then you've made history." Kor looked at her sharply. "History? No, Doctor. We've lost history. Our world, our families, everything we knew, it's gone." The words hit her harder than she expected. For the first time, she saw not relics but people, lost travelers who had slipped out of their own time and landed in a world that had forgotten them. Outside the human ship, the Vorthian Council was already making decisions. Some wanted to seize the Odyssey to 4 and disassemble it for research. Others wanted to preserve it as a relic of ancient science. Arguments erupted across the communication network. "This is the key to time travel," shouted one scientist. "We must study it." "It's too dangerous," said another. "We don't understand how it works. A single mistake could destroy this entire station." Commander Zareth Kul listened in silence before making his choice. "No one touches that ship without my permission," he ordered. "If that drive is unstable, we could all die." That night, Elura returned to the human ship secretly. She wanted to speak with Kor again. When she entered the dimly lit control room, she found him sitting alone, staring at a small photo on his console, a picture of Earth, green and blue, glowing with life. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. He nodded without looking up. "It was. You said our planet is gone." "Yes," she admitted. "It collapsed centuries ago. Your sun became unstable. No one survived." Kor closed his eyes. "Then there's nothing left of us." Elura hesitated. "There's you. And your ship. You're proof that humanity existed, and that it achieved the impossible." He turned to face her. "You don't understand. We didn't mean to prove anything. We were just explorers trying to find a new world for our people. Now we're ghosts from the past." Elura wanted to comfort him but didn't know how. The Vorthians didn't understand grief the way humans did. But she felt something. Respect, admiration, maybe even guilt. The next morning, the situation changed dramatically. One of the Vorthian scientists, eager for glory, disobeyed orders and attempted to activate a probe inside the Odyssey I-4's engine chamber. The probe emitted a high-frequency pulse that triggered the ship's core. Suddenly, alarms blared across the station. The walls shook, lights flickered, and the entire bay filled with a strange blue glow. "What's happening?" Zareth Kul shouted. Elura checked her readings and gasped. "The temporal field is reactivating. The ship's engine is trying to restart." Inside the Odyssey 4, the human crew scrambled to regain control. Mira shouted, "Commander!" "The drive's reacting to their scan. It's destabilizing the field." "Shut it down," Kor yelled. "Manual override now." The ship trembled violently. Waves of light rippled across its hull, bending the air around it. The Vorthians outside watched in horror as the human vessel began to shimmer and fade. It was phasing between time, slipping through moments like pages of a book. Zareth Kul gave the order to evacuate the bay, but Elura refused to leave. She ran toward the ship's airlock, shouting, "Kor! You have to stabilize it from inside." Through the noise, Kor heard her. He slammed his hands on the controls, sweat pouring down his face. "Mira, Harris!" "Redirect power from life support to the containment field." Mira obeyed instantly, her fingers flying across the panel. Sparks flew and the ship's lights dimmed, but the field began to settle. Slowly, the shimmering stopped. The ship reappeared solid and real once more. When the light faded, the Vorthians cheered in relief. Elura collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Zareth Kul looked at her. "You could have died," he said. "So could they," she replied, glancing at the humans stepping out of their ship, exhausted but alive. But they didn't run. They faced it. That's why they survived for 1,000 years. For the first time, the Vorthians felt something they had never felt toward another species. Humility. They realized that these humans, with their fragile ship and simple technology, had achieved something their entire empire had failed to do. The Odyssey IV was no longer a joke or an artifact. It was a legend, a living testament to courage, curiosity, and the unbreakable will of humanity. And in the quiet aftermath, as the ship powered down and the stars outside shimmered softly, Commander Kor whispered, "We didn't mean to make history, but maybe history found us anyway." Days passed after the Odyssey IV's near disaster, but the shock of what had happened still echoed through the Vorthian research station. The aliens had seen something that defied everything they believed about science and time. For centuries, they had called themselves the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Now they had to face the truth that a small, fragile human ship from 1,000 years ago had done something their brightest minds had never achieved. Commander Elias Core and his crew were now treated with a strange mixture of awe and fear. The same aliens who had once mocked their ship now watched them with deep respect, even reverence. Everywhere Core went, curious eyes followed him. The corridors that had once filled with laughter at the humans' expense were now silent whenever he passed. The name Odyssey IV had become something whispered, almost sacred, but for Core and his crew the admiration meant little. They were still trapped in a future where everything they knew was gone. Mira Voss sat by the viewing window one night staring at the endless stars. "Commander," she said softly, "I keep thinking about home. About Earth, the sun, the oceans, the sound of rain. We'll never see any of it again." Core stood beside her. "I know, Mira, but maybe our home isn't lost forever. Maybe it lives through what we left behind." She turned to him with tired eyes. "What do you mean?" He looked at the stars. "We came here by accident. But maybe it wasn't meaningless. Maybe this happened for a reason. Maybe the universe wanted someone to remind them what humanity was." Meanwhile, the Vorthian scientists were still hard at work. They had been studying the data collected from the Odyssey IV's logs, trying to understand what had truly happened during that first warp jump. Elura, the lead scientist, was in the analysis chamber when she discovered something shocking. She called out to her team, "Stop everything. Look at this reading." On the holographic display, waves of temporal energy appeared like ripples in a pond. "These are the energy signatures recorded from the human ship's first jump," she explained. "But look at the pattern, it's stable. No collapse, no energy leak. Their ship didn't just malfunction, it succeeded. They created a perfect temporal field." Jareen, one of the younger scientists, frowned. "But how? They didn't have quantum stabilizers or advanced fusion drives. How could such an old ship achieve this?" Elura looked at the data carefully. "That's the thing. They didn't use quantum technology. Their system relied on simple mechanical precision, gears, coils, and plasma flow. It's pure physics. Their design avoided the very paradoxes that destroyed our own prototypes. In trying to make our machines perfect, we made them too complex. The humans kept it simple, and that simplicity saved them." Her words spread quickly across the station. Soon every Vorthian leader wanted to see the proof. They all gathered in the central council chamber, watching the recordings of the human warp test. The video showed the Odyssey IV's small crew smiling nervously, counting down to their first jump. Then came the flash of light, the distortion, and the sudden disappearance. When the video ended, silence filled the room. Zareth Kul, the Vorthian commander, finally spoke. "You're saying this accident, this ancient human experiment, created time travel?" Elura nodded slowly. "Yes, it's not magic, Commander. It's science. But science they discovered 1,000 years before we did." A murmur swept through the council. For a civilization that had built its pride on superiority, this was a heavy truth to accept. One elder leaned forward and said, "If this is true, then the humans weren't primitive. They were pioneers." Zareth Kul looked thoughtful. "Then perhaps we owe them more than we thought." He ordered that the Odyssey IV's full data logs be decrypted and translated. It took several hours, but when they finally opened the ship's encrypted memory banks, they found something that changed everything. The ship had been recording not only navigational data, but also visual logs of the crew, moments from their journey, stored carefully as history. The first video showed Commander Core and his team before the jump. They were smiling, nervous but determined. "This is it," Core's recorded voice said. "The future of humanity depends on us. Let's make history." The next video showed chaos, alarms blaring, bright lights flashing, Mira shouting that the warp field was unstable. Then came silence. The screen went dark, but the final log, found deep in the ship's system, showed something else entirely. It was a personal message from Commander Core, recorded before the mission. "If anyone finds this," he said, his voice calm but full of emotion, "know that humanity always looked to the stars with hope, not greed. We built this ship not to conquer space, but to understand it. Whatever happens to us, remember, we tried." When the video ended, even the Vorthian council members sat quietly. Elura felt her throat tighten. These humans who they had mocked had risked everything for the sake of discovery. Zareth Kul turned to Elura. These people deserve more than study. They deserve to be remembered. Later, Elura met with Commander Kor and showed him the decrypted footage. When he saw the old recordings, his eyes filled with emotion. "That was our dream," he said softly. "To explore, to learn, to leave something behind." Elura nodded. "And you did. You've left behind a legacy that will change everything we know about science. Your ship will become the most important artifact in our history." Kor gave a tired smile. "Artifact? We're not museum pieces, Doctor. We're still alive." She looked at him with sympathy. "I know, but your time is gone. You're living in the future now, a future that doesn't belong to you." Those words stung, but Kor knew she was right. Still, he refused to let humanity's story end as a scientific curiosity. "Then we'll make it belong to us," he said quietly. "If this is the future, then we'll make sure humanity's spirit lives in it." In the following days, the Vorthians and the humans worked together to fully understand the Odyssey 4's drive. Elura and Mira spent long hours comparing data, slowly piecing together how the time rift had formed. The engine hadn't malfunctioned. It had achieved something never before seen: a stable temporal loop. The humans had unknowingly crossed not just space but the very boundary of time itself. But there was danger too. The drive was still unstable. One wrong signal could trigger another time shift, possibly destroying the ship or the entire station. Kor warned the Vorthians not to tamper with it further, but some scientists wanted to take the risk. "This is the key to controlling time," one argued. "We could rewrite history, prevent wars, stop disasters." Elura shook her head. "Or we could erase ourselves entirely. The humans barely survived it once. We might not be so lucky." Zareth Kul supported her. "We will not risk another catastrophe. The ship stays as it is. Commander Kor and his crew will be protected." That night, something unexpected happened. The station's main broadcast system lit up with an open transmission, a signal from the Odyssey 4. The humans were sending a message to the galaxy. It was Kor's voice, strong and steady. "To whoever hears this, we are the crew of the Odyssey 4. We come from the past, from a world called Earth. We do not seek to rule or conquer. We only seek to remind the universe that knowledge and courage can outlast time itself." The message spread across the stars, picked up by hundreds of listening posts and relay stations. Civilizations far and wide heard the story of the humans who had traveled through time by accident and survived to tell the tale. Many called it a myth. Others called it a miracle. But for the Vorthians, it was something more. It was a lesson in humility. They realized that even the most primitive species could achieve greatness through curiosity and courage. After the message, Zareth Kul met with Kor one last time in the docking bay. "Your words have changed how we see ourselves," he said. "For that you have our respect." Kor smiled faintly. "Respect isn't what we wanted. Understanding is." Zareth Kul extended a hand, and for the first time in history, a Vorthian and a human shook hands, a gesture of friendship that transcended time. As the Vorthians prepared to enshrine the Odyssey 4 as a historical artifact, Elura stood quietly beside the ship, watching its flickering lights. "You've done something no one thought possible," she whispered. Inside the ship, Mira looked at the old control panels, her voice trembling. "We built this to reach the stars. I guess we reached a little farther than we planned." Kor smiled at her, though sadness lingered in his eyes. "Maybe that's what exploration really is. You're reaching beyond what you understand, even if you lose everything along the way." The Vorthians continued to study and learn from the ship, but none of their experiments ever managed to recreate the Odyssey 4's miracle. It remained one of a kind, a reminder that sometimes greatness is born not from perfection, but from the courage to take a chance. And as the years went on, the story of the humans who traveled 1,000 years into the future became a legend told across the galaxy. A story of hope, bravery, and the endless curiosity that keeps every civilization, no matter how advanced, looking up at the stars. Months passed since the discovery of the Odyssey 4's true nature, but the memory of that ancient human ship continued to echo across the galaxy. The Vorthian collective, once proud and arrogant, had been humbled forever. What had started as mockery ended as deep respect. The humans, who were thought to be long extinct, had achieved something beyond imagination. Their outdated ship had not only survived 1,000 years, it had crossed time itself. And now, its story was rewriting the very history of the stars. The Odyssey the Four was moved to a vast observation chamber at the heart of the Vorthian capital world, surrounded by glowing stasis fields and shimmering protective barriers. Thousands of beings from different systems visited it every day. They came not just to see a relic, but to feel the mystery it carried. The once dull and battered human ship now stood like a monument, a silent witness to what courage and curiosity could achieve. Inside the chamber, the air was always filled with a quiet hum, the sound of machines scanning and preserving the ship's structure. But there was something else too, a sense of awe. The Vorthians no longer saw it as an artifact of weakness, but as a beacon of wonder. They called it the Ship of Time. Commander Elias Kor and his crew had become living legends. They were studied, celebrated, and honored as ambassadors of a civilization that no longer existed. For them, however, the fame felt bittersweet. Every time Kor looked at the holographic displays showing their story, he felt the weight of all they had lost. Earth was gone. The people they knew were dust, and yet here they were, still breathing in a world that saw them as ghosts from another age. One day, a ceremony was held in the central plaza of the Vorthian capital. Millions gathered to witness it, both in person and through galactic broadcasts. The Supreme Chancellor of the Vorthian Collective stood before the crowd, his deep voice echoing across the plaza. Today, he began, we honor the Odyssey 4 and her crew, travelers not just through space but through time. 1,000 years ago, when our ancestors were still learning to navigate the void, these humans dared to go beyond the stars. We mocked their creation as primitive, but now we see it as proof that true greatness is born not from perfection, but from courage. The crowd fell silent as Commander Kor stepped forward. He wore his old Earth Federation uniform, patched and worn, yet clean. His voice was calm, though his heart felt heavy. We never set out to become legends, he said. We only wanted to explore, to see what lay beyond our skies. We didn't expect to wake up in a galaxy that forgot our world. But if our journey has reminded you of anything, let it be this. No technology, no empire, no age of progress can replace the simple will to dream. That's what made us human. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was slow, steady, respectful. For the first time in Vorthian history, an entire civilization stood still for a moment of silence. Not for victory, but for remembrance. After the ceremony, the Odyssey 4 was officially declared a temporal heritage vessel. It would never be dismantled or replicated. Instead, it would be preserved as it was, frozen in time. The Vorthians built an enormous glass dome around it, allowing visitors to walk through holographic projections of its history. They even reconstructed small parts of Earth based on the ship's memory banks: blue oceans, green forests, golden sunlight. For the Vorthians, it was the first time they had ever seen what Earth might have looked like. For Kor's crew, it was like seeing a ghost of home. Mira Voss walked through the simulated forest one day, her fingers brushing against a holographic leaf that shimmered under her touch. It's beautiful, she whispered, tears in her eyes. But it's not real. Kor stood beside her, his expression soft. Maybe not, he said, but maybe that's enough. Maybe this is how Earth lives on, through the stories we leave behind. As the years passed, the humans began to adapt to life among the Vorthians. They learned the alien languages, studied their science, and even began to teach them things about old human engineering. Kor and Elura worked together to translate the Odyssey 4's old Earth data, books, music, and history. Slowly, fragments of human culture began to spread among the stars again. Vorthian children started learning about Earth in their education modules. They studied human philosophy, art, and music. The melody of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony echoed in alien schools, while old Earth poems were displayed on holographic walls. To many, humanity became a symbol, not of extinction but of endurance. One evening, Kor stood on a high balcony overlooking the Vorthian city. The sky glowed with soft purple light, and floating ships drifted silently through the air. Elura joined him, carrying 2 cups of steaming blue liquid, a traditional Vorthian drink. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Every day," Kor replied. "But maybe that's what keeps us alive, remembering where we came from." Elura smiled faintly. "You've changed us, you know. The way we think about science, time, and even history. Before you came, we thought progress meant leaving the past behind. But your ship, it taught us that the past is what makes the future possible." Kor took a slow sip and nodded. Then maybe we didn't lose everything after all. A few months later, a new discovery shook the Vorthians once more. Deep within the Odyssey 4's core, engineers found a dormant message stored in encrypted data, a transmission meant to activate only after the ship completed its first warp jump. When decoded, it revealed the words of the Odyssey 4's original creator, Dr. Evelyn Harper, the scientist who had designed the experimental warp drive. Her message was short but powerful. If this ship survives, if it reaches the stars, then humanity's spirit has succeeded. Our dream is not just to travel through space, but through time, to ensure that even when we are gone, something of us remains. Let this ship be our voice to the future. When Kor heard the message, he closed his eyes and smiled sadly. She did it, he said softly. She really did it. We are that voice. The Vorthian Council decided to broadcast Dr. Harper's message across the galaxy, encoded into a signal carried by light. It traveled through every known system, reaching distant worlds and forgotten outposts. Civilizations old and new heard her words and learned of the humans who had outlived their own time. Some called it a myth. Others called it prophecy. But for everyone, it was a reminder that the will to dream could outlast even extinction. Over time, the Odyssey 4 became a sacred place. Pilgrims, explorers, and scientists from across the galaxy came to see it, to touch its surface and to leave behind offerings, small tokens, carvings, or lights in memory of humanity. The ship became more than metal and circuits. It became a symbol of hope. Even centuries later, stories of the Odyssey 4 would still be told. Teachers would tell children about the brave humans who traveled through time in a broken ship. Poets would write verses about their courage. And in the great halls of the Vorthian academies, students would whisper that somewhere out there, beyond the known stars, maybe more human ships were still drifting, waiting to be found. As for Commander Kor, his hair turned silver with age, but his spirit never faded. One night he visited the ship alone. The chamber was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of the preservation field. He placed his hand on the hull, feeling the cold metal beneath his palm. You brought us farther than we ever imagined, he whispered. You carried our world through time. Maybe now you can rest. He stood there for a long moment before turning away, leaving the ship glowing softly in the darkness. Years later, when Kor and his crew were gone, the Vorthians built a monument beside the Odyssey 4. It bore a simple inscription, "In memory of those who dared to dream beyond time. Humanity, forever explorers." And so the legend lived on. The Odyssey 4 remained untouched for generations, floating inside its stasis chamber like a sleeping giant. Some said that even after thousands of years, the ship's engine still pulsed faintly, as if it was alive, waiting for the day it might fly again. And somewhere in the silent reaches of the galaxy, the signal from Dr. Harper's message continued to travel through space, carrying the story of humanity to worlds yet unborn. A story of courage, of loss, and of hope. A story of how one outdated ship built 1,000 years ago had reminded the universe that true greatness is not measured by power or age, but by the fearless heart of those who dare to dream.